Okay, welcome everyone to another
Okay.
exciting, action-packed Magic Sandwich show. And I'm pleased to welcome the usual suspects, Aaron Ra and Thunderfoot, and also our special guest today, Lona Frank, who is a journalist and author. She's written books Mindfield and more recently My Beautiful Genome. Her background is a PhD in neurobiology, although at the moment she is a writer and journalist in Denmark, but also fits in a busy worldwide speaking engagements as well. So welcome to the show, Dr. Lona Frank.
Well, thank you, Mr. Jones.
You may have seen from the promotional video that I put up that we're going to try and steer clear of religion this week. The reason being that, quite frankly, we're a bit sick of it. We've got bored of bashing religion, partly because the arguments that are advanced in favour of religion really don't get any better. So we're going to stick with science today. And if you have any questions in relation to science, any topics at all that you'd like to discuss, please send us a Skype contact request on Magic Sandwich Show, and we'll hopefully get you into the show. We've got a couple of callers already lined up. But we're going to start first with a general discussion, and I'm going to invite all of the panelists to say what, in their view, has been the most significant scientific advancement in their lifetime. And Dr. Frank, may I start with you?
Sure. Well, I would have to go with the genetic revolution, because what is happening right now with the genetic revolution is that we are all getting our hands on genetic information. What we're seeing right now is kind of, biology's parallel to the PC revolution. Genetics used to be for experts only, and now it's, moving into consumer genomics. I just had an email a couple weeks ago from a friend saying that within, this year, it's only going to cost $1,000 to have your entire genome mapped out and sequenced. 2 American companies are coming out with this new price. And it's just moving so incredibly fast. And in no time, we're going to have all this genetic information in the hands of consumers and God knows who. And I think it's going to have at least the same impact on society and on us and on our thinking about ourselves as the computer revolution had. So I would have to go with that.
Okay, Thunder.
I mean, I would have to go to a more basal level and say it's the revolution of silicon that's had the largest effect on the advance of knowledge. And simple ways to look at that is, the typical humble desktop here now has computing capacity of almost the entire human brains of the planet. The ability, machines are very good at crunching numbers. And you only have to look at how all this, even the structure of DNA itself. You would have got the general structure of DNA, but to solve crystals, all modern crystals are actually solved through these sort of fast Fourier transform routines, which are only really possible with computers. Similarly, you take a look at all of the genomics. Human genome's about a gigabyte of data, give or take. Now, that'll fit on a flash drive the size of your little finger. But if it's not on, the idea that you could do any of this without computers is a complete non-starter. So, yes, I would agree that, genomics is where the next big revolutions are going to take place. But the one that sort of enabled it was the computers.
Yeah, but you remember Star Trek, and they had all these incredible things. They have warp speed travel, and they had interplanetary travel, they had anti-gravity, and they had all these other things that we will, and the holodeck, and all these other things we will never achieve. But my cell phone is capable of stuff that Captain Kirk's communicator couldn't begin to think about doing. What cell phones are capable of now. We ran a show from a cell phone. You talk about the integration of the internet and the communication systems and everything that the phones can do, and they're working on AI intelligence in these damn phones. In a crowded restaurant, there's a lot of people talking. I ask, what the hell is this song playing in the background? My stepdaughter tells me the answer in like 10 seconds. She tells me about some song with a title from 1972. How did you know that? I didn't. My phone told me. She plugged it in, and it caught part of the song over the crowd. I think that's spectacular. You know, just where cell phone technology is going in accordance with the internet and communication in general. I'm really excited about that. That has had an enormous impact on, you know, my life and what I'm able to do and what used to seriously frustrate me growing up. So that's
if I'd been asked the question, which I haven't, I mean, I suppose I'll ask it
can
myself.
ask you.
I was going to say Skype, but somewhat jovially, because just using that as an example of just how the speed and effectiveness of communication and the access to information has just changed. I mean, I remember thinking back to one of the things you were talking about just then, Owen. You know, you want to look up what the title of a record was in 1972. You'd have to go to a public library and find a book. I don't think that public libraries are really going to survive anymore, are they? I mean, they're almost redundant so far as accessing information is concerned.
Yeah, and when you're talking about having a location for all these books, it's the same thing with pretty much anything else. I mean, I was recently asked to do a radio show, but it's not in a studio anymore. Everybody does it from their house. It's not on the radio anymore. It's all on IP. The shows like we're doing, that regular TV shows have stopped being televised over the airwaves. I mean, everything's going over IP, so it's all internet based now. It's all on IP.
I just have to say, I noticed something interesting here, which you see in real life as well. You have a bunch of guys there who will all find, you know, some kind of non-living technology to be the most fascinating thing. And you have the one woman who will, of course, go with something biological. And that's what you're seeing in, you know, university studies everywhere. Women are taking over all these, you know, biological courses and everything that has to do with the living world, whereas guys will still go to, you know, computers and stuff like that.
We still love our train sets. That's why.
Yeah.
Well,
it just goes to show that there are interesting gender differences that we can argue about, but we still don't exactly know why it is that those interests are so different.
If you would be fair to me for a moment, my primary interest, I mean, my field of deepest interest is in phylogenetics. But now, how can I answer that when you already have taken that answer?
All right.
All right, let's move on.
Before moving on, let me just say that there's one other thing. Just taking a look at where we have overtaken Star Trek and where we have lagged. Someone's just said that the Samsung Galaxy is fucking amazing, and it eclipses anything that Captain Picard ever had. And then you look at other things that, you know, people used to be king of the world with. Facial recognition. You now get facial recognition on whatever these Xbox Connect things. It recognizes your face and can identify you from it. And I find this almost an unsettling level of technology, in that it's encroaching a little too far on, you know, as humans, you'd like to think that there are still some things I can do better than the machines.
Okay, you want to see how nervous it makes me? You know, my wife gets this phone, which I give her credit. The phone has gotten this out of a couple of jams because it's got satellite technology. It shows you where you are on a dirt road in the middle of Oklahoma trying to get home. And I'm a kid. That's great. You know, and it tells my daughter about some song from decades ago that it only heard a piece of. But
it also it also shows people who are looking in where you are.
Exactly. And I don't even want to discuss all that. I'm aware of it. Yeah, I mean, and it has been used against me, to be sure.
I don't think that the software necessary for facial recognition of you, Aaron, would have to be too sophisticated.
I like everybody.
Is this concern about being identified why your camera is not working?
It is if you look on.
Perhaps you'd like to turn it on and off, Aaron, and see if that helps, because I want to move on to sort of like the bad side, the downside. And I know that Dr. Frank has a number of issues that she has in relation to this. Can we start with let's take the first one of what you've referred to as denialism. Firstly, explain what that is, and then explain its relevance to science and your concerns.
Right. I mean, it's basically talking about when it becomes almost an ideology for people to disregard evidence for something because for some reason it doesn't fit their worldview. So you basically you keep denying all the facts that come together and tell you that your children will not get autism from MMR vaccines. It's been shown over and over. You still have a strong movement in the US telling people to not get their kids vaccinated. And it has become a cause for them, an ideology. And you see this again and again. Some people have it with climate change. Some people have it with, all sorts of, let's say, alternative medications or, vitamins, for example, is a great case. You can read about it in Michael Spector's book, Denialism, where, he has a go at vitamins and how it's been shown over and over and over that, taking multivitamins does not protect you against cancer or heart disease or, even the common cold. But it's a business of billions of dollars. People simply want this stuff. And it's the same kind of dispensing of all logic that you have behind, superstitions and religions. And we see it more and more. And even among, educated, enlightened people, that they will simply disregard evidence. And we see it, I think, more and more among politicians as well, who will disregard evidence when the evidence doesn't fit their politics, like with climate change or, other areas of science.
That's more understandable, isn't it? I mean, if they've got a political agenda, you can understand why they might want to skew the evidence.
You can always understand this stuff, and you can understand religious people, but that doesn't make it a good thing.
Oh, I wasn't defending it at all, but
what I'm confused about is people who have a high level of intelligence. I mean, I know one couple, for example, that he holds a medical doctorate, and that she rates high enough on her. She took the tests to gain entry into Mensa and qualified for, had Mensa level intelligence. Yet he believes, and they're both atheists. He is a chiropractor and believes he has spiritual healing powers. She is into homeopathy and herbalism.
Right.
And these are intelligent people.
But that's what I'm saying. It's as illogical as religion. You just sort of, you look at the evidence and you blank it out. Oh, I would rather want to believe that I have healing powers. I would rather want to believe in homeopathy, even if my intelligence ought to tell me this stuff is not true.
Well, I think the fundamental problem is trust, in that most people, they only get sort of maybe 15 years of education, third Latin generation, 5 to 20, give or take. And in that time, you only get the most rudimentary education, to the point where you have to trust other people as to what are the correct decisions to make here. And so you get this hierarchy of trust. Now, the problem with the hierarchy of trust is it can be abused and it can be perverted. If you actually want to discredit things, it's all essentially based around perverting the hierarchy of trust. So if you take a look at one of the reasons that most people used to trust scientists is because they were sort of deemed fairly honest, reliable people. Now you get people like the climate change deniers coming in, and they're doing sort of big tobacco, sort of casting doubts and dispersions wherever possible. They are undermining the trust that people have in science. And people don't have the education to actually make the assessment for themselves. They have to trust in the opinions of experts.
Right. I think,
now,
I think definitely the whole question of education is a central one. I mean, the science education in many countries is appalling. And the thing is that we might have a little physics and a little chemistry and a little biology, but most people have no idea basically of, they don't understand the scientific method, that it's not about one scientist doing one experiment and then you have to either trust him or not. But, you have several studies, you cannot prove anything scientifically, you can only disprove and so on and so forth. So
I mean, this has always been my take on it, is that you distill science down to its absolute fundamentals, and you can sort of sum it up in usually a couple of lines which don't stick in people's minds. It's all about creating models with predictivity. If you can't get the predictivity out of it, then it's not very much used. And this is where things like magic, where gods, where things like homeopathy fail, is that they don't have this predictive element to them, which is why they're discarded as being pseudoscience. And that's the core, all this sort of confusion about proving and laws and all that sort of crap. None of that really matters. The ultimate metric by which you assess good scientific models and bad ones is how successfully they are at predicting things.
Sure.
This is why Newtonian physics, quantum mechanics, relativity, genomics, evolution, and such like that. That's why these are the stalwart core of modern science, is because they allow us to sequence someone's genome for whatever it was, $100.
Oh.
I mean, you mentioned, why is this sort of distrust or lack of interest, though? I don't understand, because science to me is fascinating, always has been, but most people find it boring or can't be interested. Is it because it's too difficult for them, or because they're not interested?
I don't even think you're right. Whenever we have the Eurobarometer surveys done in Europe every year, every European country, you ask people, for example, what would you most like to read about in the papers? And the number one topic is always, medical science, medical news, blah, blah, blah. People love this stuff. And, they buy tons of, magazines full of science articles and so on and so forth. But apparently from there to, to using your logic and actually trusting the scientific method, there's a disconnect somewhere. It's like, it's just, very, very basic. Like women, for example, in general. Why do they keep buying these stupid cosmetic products that will say in ads, it's proven that, you will look 10 years younger, rah, 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 rah. We all know that is not true. And that has been shown over and over that these creams don't work, for Christ's sake. But it's like magic. You want to trust this stuff.
Well, it's wishful thinking, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, you kind of hit on the thing for when you're talking about climate denial, and to a large degree when you're talking about things like creationism. In both cases, you have an escapism specifically from responsibility. When I was thinking historical geology, I mean, they talked a great deal about the effects of climate change and overpopulation and our rates of consumption. And it doesn't matter how fuel efficient your car is when 7 billion people becomes 25 billion people in a single generation. And somebody in the class, admittedly, this is in Texas, and this was a college class in Texas. This guy says he has a 1962 Chevy Chevelle with a 454 and a 4-barrel carburetor, and I'm going to keep driving that 454 because it's a badass car. I ain't going to change my lifestyle just because you say that it's. And so it's very short-sighted. Unfortunately, in the political situation and in the commercial situation, you have people that cannot see beyond the next quarter and how much money it makes for them. That's why they depend on these being the last days, because they can't be held responsible for leaving a jacked up planet.
Right.
Is that putting the horse before the cart, though? Sorry, the cart before the horse. Is it because they believe that we're in the last days that they don't have responsibility, or they're avoiding responsibility and clinging on to we're living in the last days?
Well, in one way is, okay, you're depriving yourself of the responsibility because there isn't going to be future generations to worry about. You can consume all the oil that exists on this world without thinking about people generations down the road. The oil that we have available to us now has been sitting here for tens of millions of years, but we're just going to chew it all up right now. And if future generations find a better use for it, it doesn't matter, it'll all be gone. But there's not going to be any future generations because it's all going to end right now anyway. And the whole universe was created for this purpose. I am the center of the universe. I am the reason the universe exists. And no matter what I do to the planet, it's going to be okay because there's not going to be any repercussions. And anybody that tells me that, and they've argued this, that species can go extinct because of my habits, I'm going to pretend that can't be, that they still exist in some remote part of the world. That anything that I do, it is going to affect or have any impact on the rest of the world beyond me doesn't matter because I'm it. I'm the center of everything. I'm all that matters. And I'm also the most humble person on the planet.
Well, that kind of stuff might be exacerbated by religion, but I think it's very much human nature that we can't really, those big things like what is going to happen to the world in 20 years, we can't really feel it. I mean, simply we have to intellectually convince ourselves, we ought to do this, blah, 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 in order not to leave a planet, that's
I was going to
hijacked.
come on to what is going to happen in 20 years or within our lifetimes in a moment. But before I do, the two issues. Firstly, if you would like to join the show, please send a Skype contact request to Magic Sandwich Show. I say we've got a couple of people lined up, but apart from that, there is plenty of spaces for you. And secondly, I know that in relation to issues of problems with science, Thunder had a point that he wished to raise. So should we deal with that before we bring the first caller in?
I just had a little addendum to add to what Aaron and Frank were saying, and that essentially what you're describing is selfishness. It's self over society. Now, with all social species, there is the balance of self and society. But I think the second factor, and whilst I would agree with a lot of what Aaron said, when he was talking about the man driving his big car, I ain't done no change and all that sort of thing. It's also a property of people is that they become less flexible to change as they get older. People like stability. They want things to stay the same. And so you do get this very large social inertia against change like that.
I have to wonder, and I often did wonder when I was a child. I mean, I was growing up in the 60s. Obviously, it was a time of very active, unprecedented social, cultural, political change in this country. The 1960s were when I was growing up, and I wondered what it was like for people in past generations, many generations ago, for whom relatively little seemed to change at all. I mean, if you go back a few centuries, I mean, not just one century, but go back a few centuries, I mean, in exactly the same kind of houses and technology and jobs that existed for your grandfather were going to be the exact institutions that your grandchildren were going to have. And there was virtually no change at all.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I thought there was an issue in relation to funding that you were going to mention. If not, we'll just take the first caller. Okay, we'll take the first caller.
I mean, what's to bring them in? Let me just say, this old saying that, if you look at it, literally all the change happens with the young people, and then those actually carry through society. And so there's this old saying that change only happens as fast as the old people die.
Which is actually quite scary when you think about how much older our society is getting. How many older people there will be and how old they will become. And being young is going to be like, just a small part of your life. And most people will be, way over 60.
I mean, already today, I was interviewed, over the course of the weekend, I think I was referred to as, young man. Thank you, young man. And here's another nice young man. And I'm thank you.
Allow me to put you at ease, Grandpa.
Okay, well, seeing as I'm about the same age as Aaron, let's move on quickly. I'm pleased to welcome back to the show Samuel. Samuel joined us, I think, last show, the show before, from Australia. And obviously, given the time difference, it was very early in the morning. He hadn't had enough coffee, but he assures me he's had a couple of cups of coffee. and he has a multitude of issues that he wants to raise. Can we take them one at a time, Samuel, and welcome to the show?